Ladies and gentlemen, Wednesday evening, we are DebateSensei. This is Tim Seavey from Visolutions, San Diego State University. Hello, I am Jared Kubika Miller. I am your debate coach, communications professor. And we are in the fourth of a 5-part series. This is the longest series that we've done. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I hope some people, like stumble upon this later, like as they're, on the run up to the tournament as well as tonight. But we're talking about the National Parliamentary Tournament of Excellence, which is a very elite debate tournament. Very few people.
NPTE top 30, yeah.
Yeah, NPTE. And so, like, we're kind of, I think we forgot to do this last week, where we just, it hasn't changed since we started. So lucky for me, because otherwise I have to hand like input this,
I learned a pretty cool fact of part of why it hasn't changed. That just made me like respect the inner workings. So the top two teams, the top like 5 teams, are Rice and Berkeley. And because many of them are in their senior year, they like just know each other really well. So they all swapped partners for the most recent tournament, just for the fun of it.
Oh,
we did hybrid teams between Berkeley and Rice.
Wow.
All their NPTE points stay the same, but because like, who cares of points? Already accepted our bids. We're already, the thing, but they've just known each other a while. I just thought that was cool. Like what a like unique opportunity that, asynchronous or even synchronous, but like virtual tournaments afford. The fact that we can like collaborate in unique ways like that. And also like what camaraderie amongst elites that like otherwise could be super competitive and like lame to each other, but they're, being cool about it. So I thought that was fun.
Yeah. You know what? That'd be awesome to like hit some of them up and ask if they'd like to do an asynchronous debate.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's really cool. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. Huh.
And looking at the number of tournaments that these kids do in a semester, it's like north of 30 tournaments for some of them, or north of 30 rounds for some of them, and like north of 40 for a couple. Like 40 rounds, and like even a deep, big tournament, you're not squeaking out more than 8 to 10. So like you're doing, but that's if you're getting to finals every time. Like they're just so many rounds. So
yeah, you know what? I think this is also a good time to kind of point out that what I like a lot about someone's got to let me know how to look up like the NDT rankings and stuff like that, because I'm also interested to see how they do it. But
yeah,
one of the things I like most about the rankings is their win percentage, because it like we got some that are right up top with like 90%, but it quickly drops off and starts settling in like the high 60s, you know what I mean, mid 70s type of range. I think that I love that about the because some people think that if you lose at any time, then it's failure, and it's not. I mean, you gotta, like, that's why baseball players have such good sort of like mentality about going to bat, because they know 2 out of 3 times they're sitting down.
Yeah, for the best players, 2 out of 3 times.
Yeah. So that's
so
like
especially this week.
Yeah, the topic for this week. Let's get on to that. Okay.
Well, just actually real quick before we go, I did want to ask, do you remember where Matt is this week?
Oh, right. Now, Matt has a condition where it prevented him from learning cartwheels his entire life. So he is taking lessons. Yeah. And so we really do wish him well on his journey. It really is one of those sort of hurdles to adulthood. Is learning cartwheel.
I hope one day he can join the adult crowd and be able to
do cartwheel.
So I look forward to that video.
All right. So we are going to be talking this week about energy, specifically the United States federal government significantly increasing its investment in energy production in the United States. It's got 3 different sources that it can do, 1 or more: geothermal, hydroelectric, bioenergy. Cool. All right, there we go. There's a bit of overlap with a NFALD topic from I think a couple years ago. Oh, it was just last year, wasn't it?
Well, it would have been 2019, 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. So just last year,
Yep.
the geothermal portion of it, and as well as the
hydro.
sort of the lead in, the preamble, and kind of
So
also
since bioenergy is new, do you want to start there?
like let's define these things. Let's
Sure, yeah.
define these things. Thanks, Justin. Letting us keeping us on point.
Thanks, Perks.
Oh man.
Good to see
Yeah,
you.
you know what? Usually by this time of the year, I've seen Justin like maybe 3 or 4 times. It's really nice.
Oh, yeah.
It's weird.
Yep. Yeah. I definitely miss you, buddy.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, also I think 2020 was like the longest decade of any of our lives. So there's part of it. Like it feels like it was a time ago. So okay, so biopower. So bioenergy, right? Or biofuel is stuff that is created via natural processes. So it's either using like burning wood is an example of a biofuel, or any like ethanol based fuels is considered biofuel. Algae based fuel. So anything that you can that oftentimes becomes similar to a traditional like propane or any kind of burning gas. So it's nice in that way, and like Ford sells trucks that can run on ethanol and that kind of thing. So I think the switch is a little bit more comfortable and a little bit easier. And so some of the other benefits are that in the production of those fuels, it's a hell of a lot cleaner than refining oil. Mm-hmm. So like biofuel refineries are not crazy different from oil refineries in what they're doing, because the output is roughly the same product, but at least it's coming from more natural things that in their life, while you're producing the fuel, you are consuming CO2. So that's kind of part of the offset, which is nice.
Right.
So I think the Department of Energy said that if we switch to all biofuels from fossil fuels, it would be like an 86% reduction in CO2.
So like that's counterintuitive. Like it just seems like you'd be replacing one with another. But do you have any idea why that carbon footprint is lower?
Well, because the current model is super damaging in both sides, right? Like in the production and the consumption of fossil fuels, you are just burning a ridiculous amount of CO2 or producing a huge amount of CO2, versus in the creation of biofuels, you are consuming CO2. So it just offsets it there. It is still net increase in CO2 production. So like there still produces more CO2 than it consumes. I mean, I'm sure that can be different based on like the age of it, right? But like algae doesn't live that long until it's produced into fuel. But like trees, I suppose maybe you could say are long enough, but that's, burning wood is supposed to be like one of the worst because it's taking all of this compressed CO2 that has been consumed over the life of the tree and now, expelling it back out. So that's where I don't think honestly you get very far with biofuel. I think that so like algae made products, there's a really good market for that, right? So like if we replaced all plastics, right? So petroleum is what I was looking for. So biofuel ends up being chemically very similar to petroleum. So we use petroleum in the creation of most plastics. So if you use algae based materials, like you've seen those cups that are like made out of corn, or they say like this cup is made of corn.
Yeah.
And it is essentially plastic, but at least the production of it didn't come from oil. It came from natural substances. So there's a decent argument to be made there, and like they can be recycled and things, and they're biodegradable.
I mean, like for plastic production, that's interesting. Like when it comes to like energy production, you're like, I don't care about we're not taking a position on the plastic production or anything like that.
Like there's a place for it, but I don't think it's in the energy mix necessarily. I don't think that's a particularly useful one.
Like the first thing that pops to my mind is cooking oil. Like those. Have you seen or heard of those organizations that go around and like collect old cooking oil from restaurants and convert that into? I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting to have. I don't know. I always like interesting sort of takes on it like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, I don't know.
I think it's the argument is that it's anything that is better than fossil fuels we should try and move to. But I think this resolution forces it. I mean, granted, it's one or more, but if the resolution is generally saying like there are only so many chips that we have to put on the table, right? Like there's only so much investment that the USFG is going to make into renewable fuels or into alternative fuels. So like, where do we really put the most dollars? And that's where I think biofuel just doesn't get far enough. I don't think that the benefits really outweigh the costs in that it still produces greenhouse gas.
You know what? Like if I was sitting down at my computer right now, I'd be looking for something that counts as biofuel, but isn't just like, burning thing. Because I'm wondering if there's other things that we just don't know about that are still considered biofuel. Like, and that gets into the definitions debate. Like, so now I feel like we've skipped the definitions, and I didn't do a background on that particular term. Man, I think
energy. I think you can broadly define any of these. So, like, there are foods that are made from algae, and algae is like a way higher consumer of CO2 and greenhouse gases than trees are. Like, the vast majority of the CO2 of greenhouse gases are actually consumed in the oceans, like via plankton and algae and things like that, versus trees. So you could make arguments for like, oh, if humans have this like huge high food demand, let's just make way more food out of algae and other things like that. So I mean, you could even argue for like the Beyond company, like Beyond Meat and things like that, because that's fuel for people. It does create energy in that sense. It is bio, like it's made from plants. So like, you can maybe make a case for those. That's a pretty good one.
Any food now, any food product you could kind of define as energy production. That's funny. Oh, like, does that start like getting into the problem of effects topicality, because you're not producing the energy? It's like, the food is what can get converted into energy within the human body.
I think that's a clean enough leap, because like fuel, right? Like that's okay. So sure, you're solving all these harms, but like the harms are the factory.
Oh man,
and like you're offsetting it by like, in order to create
such a simple spin on energy production. That is
okay. So I think food could actually be kind of a unique one.
Huh.
Yeah.
So, oh man.
Soylent Green, lean and hard.
Yeah. No, I mean, but it could straight up be a case for veganism. I mean, if people have a cause that they want to stick to, I think animal rights is a legit one. If they want
really good research out, like the Gates Foundation is backing Beyond and those various like meat replacement companies that make from all organic and plant-based stuff.
Oh man,
so I think like there's probably a lot of really good evidence out there that you can really pull from that you wouldn't even have to look that hard to find.
I like that one. Oh, I know who I'm gonna tell that. Let's skip on to the next one though. So what was it? Hydroelectric.
Yeah.
Huh?
So this one, I've got to throw out there. So hydroelectric power, the base definition is like any conversion of the movement of water into electricity, right? It's just like passing water that's naturally moving through a turbine and outputs electricity. Now I have seen a really, really good, this was in the final round of a very competitive LD tournament that I judged, and it was the debate between hydroelectric and hydrokinetic. So the majority of like the really good products out there that I've seen, or at least that are very successful LD cases, are hydrokinetic inventions. So like buoys that float out in the ocean, and just the like movement of floating up and down, it doesn't like take away the waves in the way that other things that are wave consuming, or turbines like slow down waves and have more of an impact on things that require movement of water. It doesn't, like, they're extremely low impact, I guess I should say. And there's like pretty good benefits to them. I think that would be where I would, if I had my hands on the lever power, like put the most money behind those. But those are technically hydrokinetic power that I've seen a really good topicality to differentiate hydroelectric from hydrokinetic. And I actually voted for the T, that like that person should actually lose because hydrokinetic is distinct from hydroelectric. So
man,
be careful on that one.
Oh man, like if anyone's got a copy of that literature, that would be interesting to take a look at. Like, go ahead and like post that up in a comment or something like that. If you got literature on the difference between hydroelectric and hydrokinetic, that's something you got to share. You know what I mean? That's something that like you got to be prepared for. That's I like that. I love those sort of distinctions, and they're very informative. I couldn't see myself voting for it.
I didn't either. I thought that it was pretty ridiculous, but he just went all in on it. Like the other team was like, like, it's a great idea, it's a cool thing, it doesn't fit this topic, and like very clearly had a lot of play in front lines. Like, here are 9 different definitions from good sources that all point out why these two things are functionally different. And it came down to like very, very like finite word usage. And I wanted to vote it down because like topicality is stupid, and this is a really great idea. But I think the individual that was running the team made a really good case for like, nope, if we allow these kinds of things that are outside, that are extra resolutional or extra topical to be brought into a round, like I thought that it actually had a good persuasive story behind the T, which makes a huge difference. I think some people are like, oh no, but this is a good standard.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, judges hate voting for T's, so you've got to actually make it compelling.
I think if someone's going to win my ballot on that one, I don't know. It doesn't seem to get to the level of significance. Like, I think I'm coming full circle on that, where I think like significance is, it's a stock issue for me. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if it would broadly be called a stock issue for, a general audience or a universal audience, but I kind of see it, as one of those stock issues. But I kind of.
So one of the interesting things I found in researching hydrokinetic, though, so even to assume that you were to go for, all turbines, all everything, so like the Department of Energy did some just initial survey, which part of me wants to call BS on, but that's kind of a separate topic. They did this initial study that said if we were to harness the power of every river, every stream, every, and all of the waves on both coasts of the United States, if we were to harness all of that power, it could generate up to 17 terawatts per year. And compare that to the US's total consumption of energy is 4,000 terawatts per year.
Okay.
So, like, not quite a quarter. And that made me think two things. Like, one, who's doing this math? Like, how are we possibly, like, I get that it's someone that's way smarter than me with probably lots of PhDs, but even still, like, that seems extremely low when you consider the sheer force of any given wave. But then you have to start considering some things like the turbines in hydroelectric are just super weak. Like, that's why hydroelectric is always such a small part of our overall energy mix. Like, the Hoover Dam does not produce that much power compared to like a wind farm or a solar farm. Like, every other form of renewable energy tends to outperform hydro by like huge magnitudes.
Well, we've also hold on, let me ask you. So is hydroelectric, according to that sort of topicality position, is it only dams then?
No. It's included because they said even harnessing wave power, which like most people would probably say is hydrokinetic.
Okay.
But so they're saying like if we were to damn the definitions and just extract all the energy using the existing technology that we have, extract all the energy from every moving body of water, including waves, it would be 17 terawatts per year. And which is like not even a quarter of our, or not even half, rather. That's
okay. All right.
So it was like, it just felt really underwhelming to me that I would think that would be way higher, especially, harnessing every wave, like just the sheer force. If you do like the physics, right? Or even just like back of the envelope physics on like any given 5-foot wave and how big that wave is and then how much water weighs, like the amount of force that every single wave generates is unbelievable. Multiply that by every mile of coastline, multiply that by every minute of every day of the year, because like waves don't stop. And there are some that like have, little fins, so they actually get the power of water pushing through them and also back the other way. So it gets, both sides of it. Like really neat stuff, but it just seems like the innovation there is so weak that's where I think you make the case for like, we haven't invested enough in it. The first iPhone cost whatever, $20 million or some insane amount of money to make. So like once we invest in technology, it gets substantially better. It gets substantially cheaper.
It's the one that needs the most investment. Now that's a really interesting argument.
That's the sole ground where I would stake myself. I'd say like it has very little environmental impacts. Like you don't have many of the harms that many others have, but with significant investment, it has the most room to grow. And like, heck, we should continue investing in things that have a small footprint.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So I think that would be where I would go if I were to write a case on the subject.
That's it. I like that justification. It's something, you know what I mean? It's like you put some thought into it,
Well, now I'd have to probably go for Beyond Meat now that we've talked about it, because I just think that's just fun, like talking about alternative. But if of the three, just my gut feeling, I would go on the hydro. But you've done a bunch of research on geothermal.
Yeah. So like NFALD last year had geothermal as one of the, I believe there was 4 options to choose, and it was really similar about increasing investment in it. And so a little bit of background on geothermal, and there's some really good stuff about like Iceland and how they've gone pretty much 100% geothermal. And
Wow.
I believe New Zealand had some pretty good stuff, but there's one really interesting side effect that happened to New Zealand, was they had geysers, kind of like we have in Yellowstone.
Mhm.
And the geysers like lost force or stopped altogether because they were harnessing, they were cooling the area. You know what I mean? It's like the surface area, because they were drawing so much, heat into
Huh.
the geothermal plant itself that it kind of decreased the activity, the geothermal activity in the area.
Okay, so you know what? Back it up maybe for a second, just because I have to confess, I don't understand how geothermal works very well. So,
Yeah.
like, just base explanation. What is geothermal?
So you usually all you do is drill pipes down deep down into the surface. So you got to have some place that's already kind of active, right? It's not like you could do this high up in the mountains or anything like that. It's like
Okay.
it has to be a place that has some sort of heat in order to get the most efficiency. And you
Okay.
just drill pipes all the way down, and it kind of creates a loop. And so the heat from below the surface heats up the water, and that's what sort of turns turbines for electricity production.
So when you're saying like heat below, is this just like gases moving around or whatever? Because the only place that I would think that like in order to get hot underground, you'd have to either be going like so deep you're bottom of the crust, or just in like a volcanically active area. So like if you're in Hawaii or something like that, maybe
Yeah,
is
that's
Hawaii like a really great place for geothermal?
well. I don't. I mean, if you have active lava flow, I'm coming to. I'm coming. My conclusion would be that's dangerous.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't think that would work. But some places like in the United States, that we have a very large caldera. All right, and it like I think it covers it at least four borders, of states and stuff like that. It's very, and it's like under Yellowstone. That's what fuels Old Faithful, and so a very large national park in the United States, and it has very active geothermal areas in within it. And so the reason why that becomes like a debate, people are like, well, don't do that. There's research out there that this caldera, it blew. Oh man, how long ago was it now? I don't have the exact number, like maybe 170,000 years or something like that. It blew. I mean, it was like an extinction level event.
Oh,
And
really?
they,
Okay.
yeah, and so it's gone. I think they have records that it's gone pretty regularly, like 3 or 4 times, like equal intervals. You know what I mean? Throughout.
Like we're talking like super volcano kind of thing?
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
caldera. You know what I mean? And so it would be a super volcano. And so according to that timeline, that we're due for one anytime now.
Huh.
And so the debate case is that we should actually put geothermal energy production inside Yellowstone. And that, yeah, you see, like,
That's gonna piss some people off.
yeah, I know. I mean, I think it's gutsy. You know what I mean? It's like to
Yeah.
go, and it's just, I don't know. I think that the debate seems richer because you could talk about the value of Old Faithful versus like the future of humanity type of thing. It's
Like
kind of like, man,
preventing an extinction event. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? And so that, I don't know, that's just more interesting impact analysis than I'm used to, I guess. That's a
Sure.
way to say it. You know what I mean? Like I'll say that at the very least. The very least. Oh man. Who's frozen? Is it me or is it you? Uh-oh. Let's take a look here. Well, in the event that it's not me, we were uh-oh.
There we
Hello.
go.
Yay.
Hey.
I'm glad.
So as far as preventing extinction events, like that one, I think like as far as those get, like it's the holy grail of a debate round is like, okay, well, can you get to an extinction? Because nothing has greater magnitude impact than extinction, and it's like 98% of the time comes down to just nuclear war. If you can talk about like real extinction events, like super volcano,
yeah,
not that nuclear war isn't real, but like something that is not just a generally political theoretical argument.
Yeah, it like you still the magnitude of debate of arguments like that are just intoxicating. You can't ignore those. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like, but the at least having a different spin on it, where it's this isn't really international relations, politics.
Yeah, it's
Talk right.
just a problem.
Yeah, it's just
It's gonna kill us all.
like and the great part is that like NASA like wrote up a white paper on it, and
Oh,
so
cool.
there's actual plan text that you can just sort of collect and research and use. It's
Do you know why it hasn't been done yet? I
yeah,
mean, besides, like some of the obvious obstacles to people saying don't drill in Yellowstone.
yeah, this is one of those examples where good defense, I think, paints you as a more reasonable debater. It's kind of like, listen, there will be signs decades in advance, like thousands of years in advance, maybe, that there's more activity like and so we're not there yet. All right. So it could be about 1,000 years till we get to that point. We are not, I think there's more immediate things that we need to be focusing on. This is like one of those things where it's kind of like, no, that's it, and like I said, like significance becomes an issue, right? It's kind of like it's not significant enough. We will have time to prepare for this and take action because they're constantly monitoring that area. They're constantly taking temperatures. There's specific things to look for and signs that should show up before we really have to start acting. Now is not the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting one. Like, do you know the kind of ancillary geothermal impacts? Like, I'm trying to think of just base negatives against something that's just taking heat from the earth versus.
So usually the areas are really far from urban centers or places that would use the energy, and the energy lost transferring over that
Oh, yeah.
far of an area is not worth it. You know what I mean? And so
Okay.
it like, even though it is very efficient and has basically zero emissions, you still
Okay.
you get a little off of it. That's why places like New Zealand and Iceland are fine, because they don't
Yeah.
have population centers that they have to worry about. So a place with 330 million people, let alone 7 billion,
Yeah.
like I don't think that I could be wrong. That'd be awesome if I'm wrong, find the evidence and do that. But I think that's the problem, is that you got to find fairly good evidence about its ability to replace all of human energy need, not just some. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. Oh,
that's
I'm looking up right now where the caldera is. So the number of states. So it spans the very tip of Utah, Colorado, Montana, and Idaho. And it's like, that's in Wyoming.
Wyoming
And
too.
that is unfortunately a very sparsely populated area. Western Wyoming, southern Montana, eastern Idaho is not metropolitan.
Yeah.
So that is tough. You're not going to be powering particularly big cities immediately around there.
I mean, there's specific formulas that calculate how much energy you lose for every mile of wire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and you just calculate it, and it just might be nothing by the time it gets someplace. So, and then like you're doing all of that. You're going into like a national park, like basically it's almost sacred to Americans. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And putting freaking energy plants in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like there's
And
no
now
way.
in the power lines, you're going to get power lines, like a ton of them run through.
And roads.
Stuff.
You have to carve roads in these places to get there.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So
well, okay.
like, yeah.
There's a counterplan idea in here that I think it's going to be tricky, because your exclusivity, like your mutually exclusive point, comes down to funding that I feel like is very loose generally.
Yeah.
But in doing a lot of this research, it seems to me that the like crux of almost all of these technologies, pretty much with the exception of solar, is turbines. Everything that we use, even nuclear, every power plant that we use requires turbines to generate energy.
Yeah.
If we just put every penny of investment into increasing the efficiency of turbines, that makes every form of energy that much more impactful. Like if we could get like a half order of magnitude more efficient turbines, our energy dependency and like the amount of resources we would have to burn to get the same amount is obviously huge. So that's where I would go with the counter plan and say, like, forget all of your sources. They all have, these various flaws. They will solve themselves. Whatever the market says we invest in, we will invest in. And meanwhile, let's make literally every form of energy more efficient by just making turbines better. So put, all into that. But I would have to say, like, the exclusivity point would come down to funding of, like, whatever the funding that my opponent uses, use that exact same funding for this. And I find that to be so weak. I think that's such a like half-hearted, exclusivity argument.
Well, yeah, when I first hear that one, it almost seems like that counterplan is super topical because it applies to all three of that. Well, not necessarily.
But it technically doesn't like, it is not an investment in any one technology. You're just working on turbines. And hell, like, you're now making coal plants more efficient. You're also making natural gas plants more efficient, and fossil, like, just every kind of plant that turns a turbine, which is all of them except for fossil or for solar, as far as I know. Like, now every single form of energy is more efficient. So it just basically gives us a longer timeline. So it solves the harms without requiring a shift.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you have to retrofit every turbine out there, but like, that seems like a worthwhile investment if you can point out that it's mutually exclusive via something like funding.
You know what? Like, if you're going with that one, I might suggest investing in like batteries, because batteries is now like not any one of those. You know what I mean? It's like, and the problem that you get into with the turbine one is like, it is a part of those. You know what I mean? It's like, say that it's exclusive. Like, how do you say this is not that, even though it's part of that? It's like, it's weird. It's like,
well, it's like, if you were to improve, I mean, you brought up the idea, or you like sparked the idea by pointing out like the attenuation of electricity over wires, right? Like, just the loss of energy over wires. If you make wire casings more efficient, right? Or just like the quality of material that passes through, right? So that's why, like, some TV cables, like really nice HDMI cables, are like mostly silver because it's a highly conductive. So like, you could use really conductive materials, whatever. So if you did a lot of investment in that, that would make the whole process, like, you wouldn't need every one of these things to be great, because all of them now become X times better. So you're right, it is tricky because it is kind of part of them. But at the same time, I think that you make the justification like, nope, I'm making coal plants more efficient. And also, sure, these other ones. But I think it'd be hard pressed to just make sure. I would have to write a lot of
kind of cool because like you just collect it from wherever, you know what I mean? And and it's like energy storage. It seems like I'm tripping out over these Tesla walls that they are installing into. I'm like, I want to learn.
Well, I think that's like fascinating. That was the whole big idea, was like, Elon Musk says that, well, the lithium batteries are just, they suck, and the market is not incentivized to innovate on them. So that's why he like started the Gigafactory and like started producing ridiculous number of batteries to intentionally flood the market to force innovation so that someone creates a better one. Like, that's pretty cool when you have the resources to just move a market that's not going fast enough.
Well, hey, that is our time, everybody. All right. We got Tim Seavey from San Diego State and Visolutions. I am Jared Kubika Miller, your debate coach, professor of communications. We will see you next week for our 5th and final installment. Join us at 8 o'clock. All right. See you later.
See ya.